When I was younger, I would drive upstate to my aunt's house along a stretch of highway. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of this road. All I know is it runs nearby Akron, New York, at some point. However, most of the drive is through rural areas with little to no towns nearby. So it was the dead of night, and my groggy self had gotten off a long shift and had to drag myself to my aunt's house, since my extended family was expecting me the following morning. Near halfway through the drive, I realized I was low on gas, which irritated me. My brother told me he had filled it up the day before, so he either forgot or was straight up lying. I saw an archaic-looking sign for a gas station off the next road. It wasn't an official road sign, literally a pole with a slab of metal attached with "gas off next exit" or something along those lines painted on. That seemed a little sketchy, but people do the same thing with fruit stands on highways, so whatever. I pulled off at the next exit onto some dilapidated country road through dense woods. The whole thing was creepy and surreal. I kept expecting Leatherface to come running out of the trees with a chainsaw. Eventually I came to the gas station and realized quickly it hadn't been open for years. It was all rusted and the convenience store's roof was caving in. The gas pumps had all been taken out as well. I pulled over next to it and checked my gauge. I would probably only make it another half-mile before running out, so I called the American Automobile Association, and they said they'd send a truck over. Now I played the waiting game. I left my engine on because when the headlights were off, everything was pitch black, and my paranoid self wasn't sitting next to an abandoned gas station in the middle of a forest in complete darkness. So most of the wait went uneventful until I sensed movement around the side of the old store, where my lights were pointed. I looked up but didn't see anything more, so I looked back down at my phone. Then over the sounds of the night I heard someone yell, "Hey buddy, come here," in a demanding tone. I looked up and there was a guy standing by the old store, looking towards me, illuminated by my headlights. He looked like a run-of-the-mill homeless guy. I was honestly spooked and figured he must have been squatting there. Still watching him, I rolled down my window and yelled something like, "Yeah, what's up?" Still mentally freaking out. I had my foot ready to floor it out of there at the first sign of trouble. "You got any change?" "Nah, I don't, sorry man." I looked up at him. He had this kind of vacant expression and was standing stiff. Then I saw more movement. There were heads, about 20 or so heads, peeking around trees beyond the man I was talking to. I couldn't see them clearly at all, but they were definitely people. Literally just heads, staring in my direction from around the trees. Then I saw another guy beginning to walk from around the gas station, and then I turned around and sped off. I got as far away from that place as my tank could carry me and updated AAA on my location. The driver came back over and filled me up, and I didn't say anything. But after he left, I wanted to call the cops, so I called the nearest town's sheriff department. They said they'd send a trooper over and I gave them the location. When I got to my aunt's house, they called me back and said whoever was there was gone, but they could tell a large number of people had been living there for a while. Blankets, canned food, the usual. The whole situation still freaks me out, but frankly, I can consider myself lucky I'll always have such a creepy story to tell. I'm just glad nothing bad happened. I live about 20 miles from the city in which I work. I live out in the country, and about a short walking distance from my house is a highway, and on the corner is a 24/7 gas station. Last week, Saturday night, I went by there right before midnight to grab some Cajun peanuts. I see one car parked on the side, which is normal, usually just a guy working and rarely any customers at this time. Do you ever feel this dread overcome you like you know something is wrong? Well, I walk in and don't see anyone, nobody behind the counter or in the store, so I take my time and assume they are in the bathroom or step to the back of the store. Surely they heard the chime on the door when I came in. I'm feeling weird and uncomfortable, so I wait a minute even though it seemed like forever, so I call out, "Anyone here?" I wait a minute more and put the peanuts down and walk out the door. I checked the car parked on the side and there wasn't anything troubling. I even glanced on the back side of the store and there was nobody. I'm pretty uncomfortable, so I just call the police. They show up 10 to 15 minutes later and they search the place. They find the cashier dead in the men's bathroom, beaten to death. They called in backup, asked me to recap what I experienced, and then I went home. That isn't even the messed up part. So I get home, and my dog is in the front yard peeing and just staring at me. He is an inside dog, and my front door is cracked open. My heart is racing, so I grab my dog and head back to the gas station and let the police know. They send one of the guys to search my house. Nothing is stolen or out of place, but there was a sign of forced entry. So this was last week, and about 5 hours ago I get a call from my brother who works for the county sheriff's office. Supposedly, they pulled the camera footage, and about 10 minutes before I walked into the store, someone came in, started punching the cashier, and then dragged him into the bathroom. On the footage, you can see me walk in and look around and call out, and then you can see me walk out and check out the car, walk to my vehicle and make a call. About the time I'm in the vehicle, the alleged murderer walks out of the bathroom and sneaks out the back door, and before leaving the view of the camera, he takes off in the general direction of my house. Fortunately, my wife was out with some friends watching Beauty and the Beast again, but I'm convinced that I missed a murderer at the gas station and then he broke into my house. This week I had a new security system installed alongside a new front door, but I'm pretty sure whoever did this is still out there. A little background here. My father was in the Army for 21 years, retired and moved to a very small town in Central Florida. He got bored after a couple of years, and even though we didn't need the money between his retirement and what my mom was making as a bookkeeper and tax preparer, he wanted to go back to work. He started working at various gas stations, and it being a small town, the owners wouldn't care if I came there and helped him out with stocking the coolers, or even running the register. This story I'm going to tell took place in 1990, and I remember the date well because it was shortly after my birthday, and being 15 in Florida, I had just gotten my learner's permit, and my dad would let me drive him to and from work just to get some experience on the road, both during the day and at night. I was sitting in my usual spot at a table that was set up along the windows, book in hand, feet propped up, and a Mountain Dew on the table, along with some snacks. I would generally spend most of the evening that way, reading books, getting up to run the register or stock the cooler at different times. I remember glancing up because something caught my attention that was unusual, and I realized that a lady was walking up our parking lot from the direction of the interstate. The gas station was right on I-75. This in itself was really strange because where we were located, you didn't get many people walking, and definitely not walking from the direction of the interstate. I figured she had broken down somewhere and was coming to use the phone to call for a tow truck or something. I was completely wrong. She came into the store, looked around for a few minutes, and I remember getting just a strange and creepy feeling about her. She walked up to the counter and started telling my dad a story about how she had gotten stranded and needed a ride up to the next big town north of us. Ocala was the town. This is important. My dad lets her know that he's working and there is no way that he can take her. She turns and looks at me, and while she is looking away from him, my dad catches my eye and subtly shakes his head, no. I was confused for a second, but then she turns back to my dad and points at me, asking if I can take her. My dad responded back that I only had a learner's permit and wouldn't be able to drive her anywhere and then drive back. Normally, I would have done it, even though it was illegal, because I'd done it a few times before already. I didn't argue with my dad, since this was completely out of character for him. He was normally chatty with the customers, but for whatever reason he was almost curt and dismissive of her. Turns out he had a bad vibe about her from the minute he had seen her walking up the drive. Well, she cusses him for a minute, and he basically tells her to get out of the store. She slammed the door open. I thought the glass was going to break from how hard she had slammed it, and then she stalks out of the store and down the driveway. I keep an eye on her and continue to watch as she makes her way back up to the interstate and then starts up the northbound on-ramp. Almost a year passes and I'm in my bedroom, less than a week before my 16th birthday. I hear my dad yelling from the living room, "Son, get your ass in here and look at this." I quickly run to the living room and see my dad pointing at the TV and look at the mugshot of the lady up on the screen, and immediately remember the lady who had been in the store. Turns out I almost gave a car ride to Aileen Warnos, who was later convicted of being a serial murderer and then later put to death.